TV shows, advertisements, Instagram, they'd all have us know that great weather is what you need to have a good time. The truth is, nature's both. Good and bad weather don't necessarily mean anything. Weather is weather, whether it be rain or sun. And the truth is, there's a lot of experience to gain when you let yourself live a little, when you let yourself be humbled, and when you let yourself face the challenges that you are capable of overcoming. Here today is Jacob Younger to share with us a little bit about overcoming the challenges of nature on his winter Appalachian Thru-Hike. Jake will go over with us some of his challenges, the lessons he learned, and why it was worth it to face nature. Remember, nature is not pedestrian. And what we are sharing here today are only lessons that Jacob has learned on the trail and that we have observed in our own lives. Take everything with a grain of salt, think for yourself, and remember that we are not the only resource in your search for facing the challenges of nature. Be smart, folks. All right, we are rolling.
Cool.
We can shoot the shit a little. It doesn't need to start off right away.
Yeah. No. Do like the
Just gonna get comfortable here.
the natural conversation lead in that all the good podcasts have, because they're just like really funny people. It's like a ha ha ha, and then like a quippy one liner.
It's like, oh, you got me.
And then
didn't see you filming.
Welcome to Riggin podcast.
Oh, didn't see you filming there.
Yeah.
Something like that. No.
So, is that what we're gonna name it? The Riggin podcast?
Riggin a podcast.
Riggin it podcast.
Rigcast. Riggin it. Rippin' it podcast.
Ripping it with Rig. That would be kind of cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're live here with Jacob Younger, the founder of Riggin It Gear Co., hiker of the Appalachian Trail. We're about halfway up Sanitas in lovely Boulder, Colorado. We got a bluebird day out here today. And Jake's gonna talk to us a little bit about weather preparation on the Appalachian Trail. So Jake, last night you were talking to us a little bit about a story you had about your first extreme weather camping experience. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I definitely camped and done outdoor activities throughout my life, but I never done anything really crazy, I felt like. And so the one year on New Year's Eve, it was going to go down to 10 degrees. And I was thinking to myself, I don't remember the last time it's been 10 degrees from just looking at the weather. So I was like, I'm going to sleep outside in this. And like, I had to do some chores that day, clearing some brush in the woods behind my house. So like I used that stuff as sticks to make like a little Bear Grylls wigwam type structure.
So you use sticks to build this?
Yeah, like just all sticks. I think I had some string and
sticks and a string
leaves.
To build a bivvy?
Oh no, the bivvy was a gift for Christmas. It was like right after Christmas, and it was one of those like emergency like tinfoil blanket kind of thingies, and it was like a sleeping bag bivvy, and because I was like getting into survival a lot at that time, like bug out bags and stuff. And so I was like, I'm gonna test this, and so I was like, but it's not gonna be warm enough, so I need to make like some other, like I need to make a structure with it, a fire and a firewall, so you can like reflect the heat back. So I did all this, and it was cool. And I'm like, I got the fire going, and it's really nice. Go to bed, early, because usually go to sleep early in the woods. So New Year's Eve, we'll go to sleep. I'm gonna wake up in the new year, and
so firewall. When you mention firewall, what is that?
It's just basically a wall of logs that you can like you put it behind the fire, and then so the heat is reflected off the fire back into your like enclosure or whatever. So the little wigwam I had.
Okay.
And it was just something I'd read. I'd never like done it before. It's something I'd read in like a survival manual.
Did it work out well?
while the fire was going, yeah, it was pretty good. And then like I tried to make. They have like you can make like a pyramid of logs or like a triangle, so like as they burn they roll in, and so I did that, but it burned too fast, so I was like gonna try to do it through the night and just stay warm. But anyway, regardless of that, I was sweating in the bivvy because it's not breathable, and it was pretty warm. And then I was on a bag of leaves and sticks for insulation, because I learned that from the book too. And the stick tore a hole in my bivvy, so like all this cold air rushes in and I'm like sweating, and it's like 10 degrees and I'm wet. It was like a shocking way to wake up. And so I just like ran inside then, and but it was cool. Like it was a cool night, and like I felt like the sky was really clear and it was very peaceful. It's not much is moving in the woods when it's that cold. Everything kind of hunkers down, so you gotta join that.
So what do you think would have happened if you didn't have a house to run home to at that time?
It would have been very bad. I would have had to, I mean, like restart the fire, I guess, and then get warm, and then maybe evaluate an escape strategy. But it would have sucked, and maybe it could have been dangerous. Definitely could have been dangerous, but it was really nice that I can just run inside, because I like pretty much almost went into shock when I first woke up, because it was like just like waking up like that was not fun. And then but like I just ran inside, drank some hot chocolate and everything, and it was cool. And but like I was like, that was kind of cool. Maybe if I prepare better next time, I could camp outside more. And I was kind of thinking about it just as far as like the bug out survival thing. I was being paranoid, so I thought it would be good to know how to rig it in the wilderness and in the cold.
So to be clear, you did enjoy that experience.
Oh yeah, it was fun. It was mild. It was like type 2 fun only when I was really cold. Most of the time it was just fun the whole time, because it was like building a fort in the woods and surviving.
And for the audience, the 3 types of fun: type 1, fun in the moment; type 2, not fun in the moment but fun later; and type 3, not fun at all. So that story might sound like type 3, but it sounds like it was type 2 for you.
No, it was cool. I think I probably made food in the fire. I probably cooked something and like had a little thing of it. It was cool.
Right on.
It was fun. Little adventures like that can kind of keep you going in your daily life, if you need to get the fix before you can get to your real big adventures.
So, and you probably learned a lot of lessons from that experience too, right?
Yeah, well, basically, I mean, it was one big lesson. It was just like you gotta actually be prepared for the cold, and like you have it, like think about your system, read about pros and cons, and like don't just assume because something can make you survive that it'll be enjoyable or like safe even, really. Because if you rip your emergency bag, like it's not good.
Right. So basically, you take an emergency survival and used it as
like main
survival. So
I just wasn't really thinking that straight and all that, but that's how the male brain develops. So
that's how you learn.
That's how you learn.
Right on. So obviously, you hiked the Appalachian Trail in the winter. So this first kind of inspiring experience for you didn't deter you from continuing to winter hike. So I'd be interested. I want to hear a little bit more about how this journey continued for you.
Yeah, so I just started camping more in general, and because I was camping more, and I started collecting the gear and stealing stuff from my parents. Not stealing, borrowing camping gear from my parents, and just going out and sleeping in the woods at school and stuff. And then tried that out a couple times, and then I went on started going on like overnight winter trips, or 2 and 3 day trips, and it was really cool. I didn't really have a bad time ever. Just carrying more weight than I needed to, but I wasn't doing as many miles, so it worked out. And like I kind of just learned how to deal with cold and all the specific issues it raises, like keeping your fuel temperature high, so it can burn right in the stove, bring the right fuel.
So when you say bring in the right fuel, what type of fuel do you mean?
You need a 4-season isobutane mix instead of 3-season blend. I forget. I think it's a propane in it. Doesn't burn at low temperatures. I could be wrong.
Did you learn that one the hard way?
Well, yeah. It worked okay, but it was like we burned. The thing died pretty quickly, and like it was heavy. Like we made it through like a trip with it, and it was fine. But it was like the next time we used it, so it wasn't like a real painful lesson to learn. But then I looked into it and found out that it's just at that temperature doesn't blend right. So like I had to get like a specific winter canister stove, and that solved that problem. You have to just have your water filters in your pockets at all times because they freeze, and if they freeze, they crack and break.
Right.
So that's a problem.
So it sounds like a lot of these lessons you didn't necessarily read. Were there any materials or things that you pulled from that saved you in any scenarios in your 2 to 3 day winter excursions? Yeah.
So like, I had like a trip or two with some failures, and then I read. So it wasn't like I definitely did read and use a lot of information. I just kind of did it till failure, and then was like, all right, how do I do this for real? So there's definitely like articles about like the real hiking biking and Jeff Garmier, his blog about the Counter Triple Crown, and there's a ultralight winter backpacking trip run by the guys that did the PCT in the winter first. So all those is like I kind of just realized I needed. Every time I went on a trip, I kind of realized more what I needed to know, and then I researched those things.
Right.
And built a pretty good understanding of what winter backpacking takes, at least in that area, from my reading and my experience.
Yeah.
It was both. You need both.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you need both. Because if you just read, you won't know what you're expecting you might come out with. Was there anything you read that proved not to be extra, something you didn't need?
There was stuff I didn't do. Like some people recommend like sleeping with hot water bottles. I think that's dangerous because if it leaks or whatever, your hose at like 10 degrees, you can't get soaking wet. As I learned. So that would have just been repeating that position, like not on the trail, like in that first night at 10 degrees when my like bivvy ripped. So it was like I was soaking wet with sweat, and then I was that cold. So luckily I didn't have any really bad experiences like that on the trail. But I don't know. They say you sleep with your boots, and they're not frozen in the morning. They're easier to put on. But I tried it once, and it like interrupted my sleep too much. So I figured rather a better sleep, and I'll just deal with the boots every morning. I'll leave them open because they'll freeze and they're hard to get on. So, but I'll just leave them open so it's easier to get on and adjust around that. And that, I don't know. I did chemicals. Some people don't say chemical treatment didn't really work so good in the winter. And a lot of times I would just do that because it was not as cold on your fingers, and I probably drank some water that was not good. But every hiker does that.
Right. That's cool. So I guess back to your 2 to 3 day winter excursions. That was a big step up, I would think, from a single night out in the elements. What were some of the lessons you learned when you did multiple overnight trips prior to your Appalachian Trail experience?
Just like kind of learn about putting on wet clothes in the morning, and how you can dry things out, like with using your stove and like using things that you're already doing, little things like that, which help a bit.
Putting wet clothes on in the morning, what does that entail?
Yeah, so I mean, you just like, if you're hiking in the winter, nothing ever dries. So if you sweat and things get wet, or if there's snow or rain and you get wet and it's cold and kind of humid like the East is, you just have wet clothes in the morning, and it's like you go from your warm, dry sleeping setup, strip down, put on a wet set of clothes, and it's like a shock to the system. You're freezing all of a sudden, and you just have to shoot off and hike and get warm again. So you kind of learn about that and like what's like how you can minimize the suffering on that, because you can't. It sucks.
It's more mental preparation, it sounds like.
Yeah, and just familiarizing myself with the specific struggles, and then like from there you just project like, okay, so this is what it's like a couple days, and going from a day to like 2 days, and then you kind of extrapolate from there, like, all right, so that was the change, and then what's it gonna be like when I have to do this every single day. And just thinking about that, like what weather I was gonna have to face day in and day out, and familiarizing myself with at least a part of it, get my foot in the door. And then, because there's no way to simulate what's going to be like day in and day out unless you do it. So, but it's good to prepare a little bit.
Right, and the safety of a 2 to 3 day hike.
Yeah.
So it sounds like one of the biggest struggles was just the wet clothing.
Yeah, for sure.
On those initial 2 to 3 day hikes.
Yeah. Oh shit, my boss just texted me asking if I can come in at 3.
What time is it now?
1:50.
This is struggles of doing a startup. We got to work our 9 to 5s or 3 to 9s. Jake's case. Is this pacing good? Are you feeling it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
We'll have to do a post-edit observation of this podcast. We can get you there at 3.
Yeah, I told him 3:10. I think we can push through and get everything done.
Yeah, because I think I
just wanted to let you know.
We're to the point where, well, I'm gonna probably right now ask you about your first AT winter excursion and your second, or do you want me to just go into like your last one right now?
Oh wait, I'm gonna talk about the one day where I got really cold before, like the big lesson. Which is, I kind of went. You asked about it.
That was your first one before the AT, correct?
Yeah.
Or your last
I think
one
you kind of set me up for it, and then I kind of whiffed on it.
That's fine.
So, yeah. So another big realization moment, I think, because I did all this preparing, and I thought, I was like, felt confident and not really arrogant, but a little bit, probably, definitely a little bit, and just thinking like, just being a little. Impulsive, but I went on this one last winter trip before I left for the trail, January 1st start, and it was like the weather didn't look too bad. It looked like it could rain, but I was like not too worried. And so we hiked miles on the Appalachian Trail near like Duncannon, and it was like nasty weather like the first to second day. And
when you say nasty weather, what do you refer to?
It was like 36 and raining all day, and like high winds and
high winds.
Yeah, well, it's not even high winds. They were high at the time. It was like 30 probably miles an hour, 40.
Okay, and that's high winds for most of us. But after you hiked the Whites, you have a different perspective on high winds.
The Whites and even like the Smokies in North Carolina.
Okay.
So, so and like I had these rain pants I was gonna wear, but they didn't fit. I was like too big, like I was too fat for them. So I was like, whatever, I'll leave them behind. And I was wearing these tights. They weren't even like my thickest wool tights, because I was like, I have these rain pants, and so I don't want my thickest, they'll be too hot, but might want to have tights underneath my rain pants while I hike. So I was process there, and so, but I didn't try the pants on really till I got to the trailhead, because I was avoiding it, and it didn't work. So I was like, whatever. Set off, hour or two into the day, it is like pouring rain, and I'm just getting wet, and like we had like 10 miles, and they're not really hard. Like I flew through them on the Appalachian Trail, but I was struggling this time. And
so this was in Pennsylvania,
then,
Duncannon?
Yeah, right near Duncannon.
So Pennsylvania's pretty flat from what
most of it. Yeah, it's not bad. It's pretty easy. And this wasn't even like a super rock. My feet were shredded because I was overweight, but like, and I was just cold. I was like my legs were soaking wet, and my raincoat was like leaking through.
And you were cold while you were moving.
Yeah, well. I was hammering as fast as I could, which was hurting my feet more.
And you were still cold.
Yeah, because my feet were getting all blistered up, so it was like, it's not fun. It sucked.
Okay.
And so I bailed. We were supposed to go to the next shelter, and I just went to the car and watched TV.
And that was probably a wise choice then, though.
Yeah. Oh, no.
What do you think would have happened if you pushed on and stayed at that shelter that night?
I mean, I had enough stuff to like get dry and like could have made it probably, but I don't know.
Probably is not great odds. It sounds like.
Yeah, like it was one of those where like I felt bad. Like I definitely felt bad, and even now like thinking about it, I feel bad because I did like quit, and I'm like, oh well, I could have pushed a little more. But and I had like a big voice in my head that was like, be safe, like, because I was like nearing it, hypothermia. I felt like, and then I found another rain jacket at the shelter, and then I put that on, and that actually warmed me up a lot, and so like that got me to the car. So like if I maybe kept rolling through, and like my feet weren't hurting so bad, I maybe could have gotten to the shelter and been okay and like lived, like I wouldn't have died.
Yeah, so to be clear, but, it's a survival scenario.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. If my feet were feeling better, I may have been more up for it, but I wasn't. So
right. So it sounds like you learned, to respect the weather, respect nature. And
yeah, it was a terrible, terrible, terrible day. Nothing was out there. There's no reason to be out in the rain like that.
Realize that you need to, if you're going to face the elements like that, prepare yourself, and that even as much experience as you had, without the right tools, Mother Nature will prevail.
Yeah, because I was like, I'll just be tough and keep moving, and it's fine.
Right.
And it wasn't. And I got home, sewed rain pants that week. Rain pants I used on the Appalachian Trail. So like, and it was good to have that lesson. And I made them bigger, and it's the whole designed them well. And those like with those on and my tights, there wasn't really, I don't think I was ever cold while I was hiking when I was on the Appalachian Trail, really.
So it sounds like from that painful
once I got moving.
Right. It sounds like from that painful experience, though, you learned exactly what tools you needed to combine with toughness to get you where you needed to go.
And, like, I had bailouts on that trip. Like, I had, we were near Duncannon, so you have a road crossing less than every 10 miles, 5 miles even. Right. So there's bailouts, and I often, like, when I'm out there, I'm like thinking every half hour, like every whatever miles, like, what if something bad happened now? Like, how would you go about, like, is there a road you can get to? Is like, so with that stuff going through my mind, with the weather, you're more ready to like take on, and you're assessing stuff more often, so you're learning more and more about how to assess things and like what things mean. And so like that's a good habit to be in. And so with that, like I had picked a trail that, like, even though it was bad weather, like there was bailout routes. I was aware that like my feet and stuff might not cooperate because I wasn't in the greatest shape. So like while it was a backcountry-ish backpacking trip, like it was pretty safe. So
you were humble enough to accept that something could go wrong.
Yeah, I think you have to be, because I really, really wanted to be like this. Obviously, because I was planning to do the Appalachian Trail in the winter, but I wanted to be this like person that takes on bad weather and isn't stopped by anything. But you have to like earn that, and like if you just do that without any like if you're not smart about that and just tough, you'll get hurt.
Yeah, so it sounds like you recognize that you didn't fully know what bad weather might entail because you hadn't experienced that before.
Yeah.
So you gave yourself opportunities to be safe should something come up that you had not foreseen, which it sounds like something did come up which you did not foresee.
Yeah. Like
because of your prior planning, you were able to escape.
Yeah, like I knew
not get hypothermia.
It was kind of funny. Like I knew in the back of my head that I wasn't acclimated to like being rained on all the time. I don't think anyone ever really gets acclimated, but at the time I thought like, oh, when you're a thru-hiker, you will be. So like I was thinking like, oh, I haven't put enough time in like any bad weather, and so I kind of knew like I have to get wet, I have to get cold, and see what that's like. Cause like on the other winter trip I took, it rained a lot, and it was cold, but that raincoat was like 2 years younger, and it was completely waterproof, and so I didn't get soaked. Everything was fine.
So you had the right kind of gear that weathered you through something that.
So I didn't even really recognize that rain could be a real problem. But like I said, with your stuff being wet in the winter, like I knew that there was going to be times when I was soaked and in those cold conditions, and you have to get around it, or like, I don't know.
So it sounds almost like you needed to go through that pain of that mistake to fully understand what could happen to you.
For sure. I think so.
If you didn't prepare.
So like that, and you have to be very safe with that. Like it's like a very controlled pushing of your limits.
Right. Because you wouldn't want to be out on the Appalachian Trail with no exits when you learn that lesson.
Or even...
Because that would get you back to building your bivvy again and your firewall. Just
and that would be like... And then it's like, I'm confident that if I had to build that bivvy and firewall, like if I broke my leg and couldn't get around that much, like I can do a couple miles, but like I know how to build a fire and get some natural shelter or whatever. But even in that situation, you have a sleeping bag, so.
Right.
But if everything got wet...
If you leave without those integral skills that you had going in there, that's just dumb. Is what it sounds like.
Because like I came to all this from like a survive in the woods, hatchet, Robinson Crusoe kind of fascination.
Yeah, so how many trips do you think, would you estimate you actually had under your belt before this, last trip on the Appalachian before your big
like
trip?
3 or 4 winter multi-day trips.
Multi-day, and probably countless
overnighters in the cold. I mean, down to 10 degrees, all
building fires.
No matter what, it was fine to camp, and convinced a lot of people also to camp in the woods in the cold. So I was proud of that.
Right on. Yeah, so
the Messiah camping movement.
It is kind of interesting too that even with all this experience, you still knew that a mistake was possible, and you still had a mistake that taught you a lesson. So it's intriguing how you can let all these trips that you have under your belt get to your head and think something's might not happen to you.
Yeah.
And I think that seems to be what causes a lot of people injury and danger on the trail.
Yeah. And I think I learned that too from like watching a lot of which this stuff is way more hardcore, but like the mountaineering videos and like Meru and just the documentaries about like K2 and people climbing like really epic stuff, and where all they talk about is humility and respecting the mountain and respecting the weather, and it doesn't matter if you being the best climber is not about getting to the top or not. It's about how you approach the journey, and it's okay to not get there. So all that kind of fed into the idea that you need to be humble. And especially with something that extreme, you can take lessons from that stuff, even if it's what you're gonna do is not as crazy. But
right on. So it sounds like one of the biggest lessons you took away, not only to get the right tools, but also just a reminder to be humble before you started your trail. Because you mentioned to me that this was kind of your last big trip before you began the Appalachian.
Correct. So it was. Yeah, it's gonna be the last trip. It was I was I'll dial in some gear. I think I wanted to test out my quilt that I had just gotten. It was the 3rd or 4th trip at that, and so I wanted to see what it did so I don't know if I thought it was gonna be cold I just wanted to take it out and test it, but because I like to test things a lot.
Right.
And so I just went out and my sisters were going, so it was a cool last little trip, and then I just got kicked in the ass.
That was good though. I think so. After that trip,
so good.
You did feel prepared, and kind of want to hear from you. What was it? What was that feeling that told you were prepared for what the weather was going to be like on the Appalachian? Was it gut sense? Was it what?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was gut sense. It was something I knew I needed or wanted to do. So it was kind of there wasn't a question of whether or not I was going to do it. It was, yes, we'll do it, but how? And so even if I wasn't, I was confident, but obviously you have ups and downs, and you waver, but I always knew that in my gut that I could do it and would be able to handle the weather. And I knew I had put in the preparation, I guess, and the mental reps and stuff. So I don't know. I just knew that it was gonna really be hard with the weather, and you just had to do your best to combat it, but accept that it was just going to suck sometimes.
Right. So it sounds like you knew on a kind of micro scale what would be coming, and it sounds like you read a lot of literature too.
Yeah, I was really bored at work.
Right.
So I just filled my head with everything I could find about it because I just really wanted to get out there. So
right on.
That was just like if you're obsessed with something, it's easy to do a lot of research and get really prepared if you really want to do something. It doesn't feel hard.
It sounds like when you know from what you've told me. So for the listeners out here, you started the trail January 1st, correct? Or you guys hiked in at the 31st of December?
Yeah,
we hiked your official start date.
Yeah, we hiked up to the shelter at the New Year's Eve, which is kind of cool. I just made the connection there that like the New Year's Eve story of my first night camping and then starting the Appalachian Trail on New Year's. But
I know. That's wild. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool. That was a really cool part of it because we like met this guy up there who like it was raining, it was shitty weather.
Okay, so your first day on the trail.
Oh, the first day was
raining.
Not fun.
Just right off the bat, welcome you into the year.
But like, I had my rain pants on.
Did you kind of
poncho? I felt okay. Like I was way more tired than anything.
You were tired?
Oh yeah. No, I was just like, well, I barely slept the night before. We left at like 3 or 4 for the airport, and then I didn't go to bed till like 12 that night because I was saying bye to people and meeting up with friends, and so like, yeah, I just didn't sleep on the plane either. And
flying down from Pennsylvania to
fly to Georgia, take an Uber, so I was like awake. I was too excited to sleep really, but it was just hard and I was out of shape, so it was just like grind to get up that.
That's funny. So you're welcome to the trail. Was it rainy? Was it cold? What was the weather like?
Like in the 40s.
40s. Okay.
Which like I was working. It was it was like the approach trail, which is 10 miles and it's mostly uphill, and you go down, but it's not like never ever going down long enough to like really lose your heat. So like I was definitely not cold coming up that, and then while I was hiking, and then like I don't remember being cold really, and it was like I said, it was like in the 40s and it was colder at home, so it wasn't like that wasn't too bad. 40s and raining isn't too bad. 30s is much worse.
When you're raised in the Northeast. That's
warm, and when you're as excited as I was too,
right.
Like I was all jacked up, ready to roll. So that just shows you like how much your mentality has to. Once you know you're safe, you just have to be amped up about it.
Right on.
So like that, and then it was kind of a mix of weather like that, or it was rainy a lot, and I had a bad, and we could probably go to this in another podcast, but like I had a really bad night. Again, it got rained on, got soaked, so I had to go back to the shelter, and that wasn't super fun, but like the system I had I survived. And then it was kind of okay weather till like the Smokies, and then it got really bad again.
So it sounds like you had some experiences that you didn't expect to come up, particularly with that night that you had to go back to the shelter and in the Smokies. What, on that first night and even the second night, those first 2 nights on the trail, can you think back to what you were expecting weather-wise and what you were foreseeing, if you were foreseeing anything?
I mean, like, the temperatures weren't that low. I was honestly like I was kind of disappointed because it wasn't snowing at that point.
Really?
Yeah, I was excited. Like I wanted to get after it, and like I was just trying to be intense about it. So like, part of me was like, I wish I could do my ice cleats, kinda. And I was also like, if it was more exciting for like snow and like intense, like I would forget about how tired I am right now, and like, because I was like, just the beginning was just tough. Like it's just hard to do because especially with like how much weight I was carrying, and like I just wasn't like, so like the weather just wasn't an issue. But I'm sure for most people that would have been the coldest backpacking trip they ever took.
Right. And what did you weigh at the start of the trail?
210.
210. And you're
160, 170.
160 now. Right on. So I imagine
Like 155 after that.
So when you say you wish the weather was harder so you couldn't focus on how hard it is, you mean you would rather have focused on how hard it was to go through the weather and how technical it was to go through the weather rather than the weight of those initial few days and what amounted to boring weather for you or standard?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Because, like, that was just beating me up. It was just how, like, I was, like, just mad at myself for being that fat. And, like,
right on.
This is hard.
So weather didn't seem like a factor necessarily at the start because of the preparation you'd done prior.
Yeah,
and
because
where
of
you grew up.
And it was just, like, I was trying harder to get in shape, but I just couldn't do it. Or just didn't do it, or I should say. But, like, I was prepared for the weather. So that was something I was like, oh, wow.
Okay, so this...
If it was just worse weather, I could show how prepared I was. Like,
yeah, so this might be, you know, you could say this weather might be hard for a Californian or a Coloradan who's only hiked dry trails, and not particularly for someone who has had this experience. But I do want to ask you, you know, when on the trail did the weather start getting tough for you, even with the preparation you'd done?
Just like whenever it would, like, the big indicator I think was just like whenever the temperature would be below freezing at night to the wherever, or below like 25 at night.
Okay.
At first, and then that as it went on and like we got into higher mountains, that bar went to like 15. So if it was below, like, there was two different. It was like water freezes, and then we kind of just got used to our water and everything freezing, and you just kind of get used to that.
And when you say get used to, what do you mean by that?
Mentally, not just don't like worry about it mentally.
So you have to warm that water up though, correct?
No, well, I just don't, like, I just wouldn't sleep with water at night. Like, there just wouldn't. I drink water I needed, empty my bottles, and then go to bed, wake up in the morning, and you gotta run and get water, and you just can't have water overnight. And that's just kind of the approach I used. Okay,
so that was kind of your first hurdle, was that first night that was 25 degrees or below. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember that night?
Nah, I don't know.
Just kind of blurred together with all the nights.
Yeah, it was probably second week sometime. I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember. But it just, there was a certain point where everything was freezing every night, and then it got colder and colder, and so, like, it got to a point where it was like under 10 degrees a lot, and then at night, and that's like a deep, deep cold, and that's hard to get out of bed too.
When you say deep, deep cold,
for me at least,
what does that mean?
Just
for you?
I don't know. It's like at that point, it was something I was not used to being out a lot in, and it was like something where it would, I don't know, like if you weren't like puffied up and had your stuff on, like getting out of bed, and like the transitions were like just really, really cold, and like you felt yourself like getting close to like I don't know, when you're filtering water and your hands are like freezing and it's like so cold, and then you just want to like stop filtering water, and then you just don't want to drink water because of it, and then that would start a chain of like bad decisions that would negatively affect you.
Right.
And so like you have to have the mental toughness, but then know that you're not like, it's like if you get your fingers wet too long in that cold, then yeah, you're gonna have like frostbite. It's gonna be bad. So that tough, smart thing again.
So I want to quickly get back to this concept, I guess, of making it hard to get out of bed in the morning. You know, like a lot of people talk about, oh, it's hard for me to get out of bed in the morning. What was the difference for you when you were in your puffy getting out of bed to 10 degrees as opposed to, you know, getting out of bed to go to work in the morning? What, you know?
Oh, it's incredibly like I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Some people might experience pain when they go to work, but like you're gonna start your day with just like getting kicked in the stomach, and then like that's kind of what the adrenaline feels like, and then it's just gonna be like really uncomfortable and like really something that you're gonna have to like slow your brain down about and like calm down and get through every single morning. Versus like, I don't know, it sucks to get up for work, but you do it.
So it sounds like you're almost like jumping into an ice bath.
No, you are. You're literally
right out of your warmth.
You're like throwing ice bags on yourself in the morning in
Every part of
January
yourself,
in at 4,000 feet up in the mountains, and it's windy, and it's like, yeah, it's crazy, but it's like fun too.
So
it's like an adventure.
Right. So I want to ask, you were warm though, correct? When you slept in your puffy and in your your down blanket.
Once I was settled in, it was all good. It's once if you have a good system, like you can master while you're hiking, you can master while you're sleeping by like staying dry when you're sleeping and having the right equipment, and then while you're hiking, you have to, fleece and a hard shell and vent properly and fiddle, and like you can sweat a little bit, but those are hard. And then it's just the transitions between those two and cooking and stuff, and how that's when you just have to be tough and like accept like dropping to a certain level of coldness. And
right, because at some point you can't cover every part of your body. You're gonna have to expose yourself.
At like 10 or 15 degrees versus like 25 or 30. Like at 30 degrees, I can sit in like my rain pants if I'm not soaked. I can sit in rain pants and my puffy, which I don't hike in, and I can cook dinner and it's okay. At 15 degrees, you're in your sleeping bag from the moment you stop hiking at the shelter, and then you're just cooking out of your sleeping bag. And like you cook on one side of the shelter, and then like move your stuff over after you're done cooking. So like if the mice come, they go that side.
That is wild. So the mice are actually out in this cold weather.
Yeah, because they smell food and they're hungry. Because
they're out in 15 degrees.
They live there. I mean, I think they burrow under the shelters and they just like hibernate kind of. But if you cook and they wake up to you and they know hikers bring food, like they're starving all winter. So like, come up, snag some food.
That's a pretty wild experience. So you hike to the shelter, it sounds like. You dive into the shelter and then you're just cocooned, trying to expose as little body parts as possible while you cook your food, and you're getting mice that are attacking you.
Yeah. But like the food tastes so good, you wouldn't believe it. Like it's
Why is that? Because it's warm, or
it's good. It's, I don't know. Like what I was eating was like, it was warm. It's filling. You're burning so many calories, so you're hungrier, and your body like appreciates it. And it was eating like good like beans and like dried meat, so it's good protein, rice, cheese, and a tortilla, mayonnaise, and then chips and stuff, so like a lot of calories. And so like you're freezing and it sucks, but it's also like, I don't really know.
Hunger's the best
better
sauce.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know a better feeling than that really that you can get in real life.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It reminds me of our time in Peru when we passed out in that ditch, and
exactly.
The wonderful lady made us delicious food. That apple tea was one of the best things I've drank in my entire life.
I literally was just like, I guess my blood sugar must have been low. I don't understand how that works, but like, this.
Your body knows what it means.
We were sitting waiting in this lady's living room, and she's making us dinner. Somehow I asked her, or David asked her through our limited Spanish, and like figured out, like told her we wanted to buy food, so we gave her money, and then we sat down. We had no idea what we were in for, whatever. Sitting there for like 2 minutes, and I'm asleep at her table, and like
Jake was asleep at a table. Someone was asleep on the floor. We were both asleep on the couches. We were sprawled out around this lady's house, just hoping for some sustenance because we had not eaten.
Yeah,
and that was really good. I can imagine.
She gave us that tea. I poured like half a cup of sugar in it. Nah, not that much. But...
No, we poured a lot.
And then I was kind of back, and she made steak and rice. It was really good.
Yeah, I can imagine that some of those meals in the Appalachian probably were, that good, if not better.
I'm kind of getting hungry thinking about it. Yeah, because it's cool, and it's like I was eating a lot, and it's kind of fun when you're because like I was fat and losing weight, and I was eating everything I possibly could. So it's like, if you don't think about what you have to do to get there, that sounds like a good deal.
Right on. Okay, so I want to ask you, how much time do you have left before you have to go to your job? Because
we should leave in 13 minutes.
13 minutes? Okay, cool. So we talked a little bit about the cold weather and how you handled that. Sounds like during the day you just kept hiking, and at night you told us how you handled that. Were there any mistakes you made in handling that cold while you're on the Appalachian? I mean, I spilled
spilled stuff when I was cooking, spilling water almost on my sleeping bag. It was like a little bit, but nah, not really.
And what would you say was the kind of top 3 pieces of advice you'd give to people who are hiking in temperatures 10 to 15 degrees on the Appalachian, who might not know what they need to prepare for?
I would say having like ice cleats is good, like some kind of ice traction and trekking poles is a good idea for just balance. Number 2, fleece is really good for like winter, especially if it's extra, like it doesn't hurt to throw extra fleece in if you're getting cold. An extra puffy, even if the puffy's a little heavy, or like, you know, a 20 degree synthetic bag with an extra layer is not bad. It's like extra layers to be like super cozy is never a bad idea. That's like, you know, maybe for through hiking you're gonna want to dial that in a lot closer, but like if it's just a backpacking trip or a camping trip, like, and that's how you dial it in. But like, you know, bring a little extra and see what you need. Maybe just start like the night with a 20 degree bag you want to test and see how it is at 25. And maybe they rated it wrong at the factory because they wanted to sell more, but you have a down throw blanket from Costco with you in your bag underneath your next to you, and then you get cold, you just throw that in there and boom, you're fine. And you know that, hey, this 20 degree bag can't do 25 or can't do 15 or whatever.
Right on.
And then 3, I don't know, just try it.
Give it a shot in a controlled environment.
It can be fun. It can be a lot of fun and very rewarding, and you get access to places like that are way less trafficked and way more isolated, and there's no leaves in the trees. You can see all the views that people don't see. So like I saw probably a lot more of the South than most Appalachian trail hikers do. So I don't know, I really enjoyed some of the mountains that people kind of not complain about, but like are apathetic about. So.
Right, you have to see beauty others, might not have, because that's a challenge. You have to pay for that.
Yeah.
So, before we move on to other weather systems, I did want to clue the viewers in who might be, thinking about this hike. Jacob does make it sound easy with all his experience on this trail. And Jake, you were telling me a story that we're going to be sharing on another podcast because we think it's worthy of a lot more time and thought. But I do want to let the viewers know, Jacob, you did tell me a story about a time on the trail where you did face a situation that, if you hadn't handled it well, could easily have led to, it could have led to death. Could have led to hypothermia. Could have led to serious frostbite. And I know we don't want to talk about that right now, but for the viewers, this is something to take seriously. And even with all the experience that Jake had, he still faced a trying challenge, a trying time that he didn't anticipate and may have anticipated, but it happens to even the best of us out there. So when you're going out there, I would recommend, and I think Jacob would recommend, to take this seriously and respect Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And that being said, we'll move on to, we talked a little bit about the cold and the ice. I did want to ask you about other types of weather systems, the wind, the terrain. What were some other challenges that you faced when you're out there?
So like the biggest challenge was like rain throughout, and that's really, once it gets a little warmer, rain is more of a nuisance than, I said more, but not completely just a nuisance, but more of a nuisance than a danger. So like a lot of times it's just a matter of going out and facing it and keep moving and just taking extra steps to keep certain things more dry. But there's times where you have to face it. I mean, I don't know. There's plenty of times where I hiked scheduled miles or took zeros around rain and not wanting to be in it. And I don't know. I kind of, sometimes in the moment I felt bad about doing it, but it happens, and I think, I don't know. It is what it is.
It's funny, you talk a lot about when we're designing gear, that you don't believe in waterproofing after your experience on the Appalachian Trail. Do you want to talk to us a little bit more about what extended periods of rain taught you?
Yeah, so like when you're doing like a through hike, you plan for what's like the ultimate state we're gonna be in. So like, yeah, you can sometimes get through a rainstorm dry, and it's cool, and you like when that happens. But like, ultimately, if it rains and it keeps raining, you will be soaked. Everything will get soaked except for hopefully your sleeping bag and your tent. But even that gets soaked. So you just have to, stay. You just keep some, like, you can keep some stuff dry, but your body is going to be soaked while you're hiking, and you have to be smart to not soak out your tent and all that. So like, you just have to get ready to be wet and know how to dry off and be safe every night, and kind of use it as a reset. And like, also recognize that if your feet are wet and you're walking on them for a certain amount of time, like, you will shred them up. So like, there is a limit to that. That's not just being tough, where like you have to let the tissue in your feet heal. And with time and with hiking experience, your feet get tougher, and with water exposure and hiking, your feet get tougher. But you still have to. I was still getting kind of blisters sometimes at the end of the trail even.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is, no matter what the tools you have, when you're in that extreme weather for these extended periods, you're gonna have to face it. You can't shelter yourself. Yeah. No matter what you do, if you're gonna be out there for that long.
Yeah, and I think if you're mentally prepared for that, and you're gonna have a lot better time than if you're stressed about it. Something bad has. If you just accept that some bad things are just gonna happen, and you're not stressed about it, I think it's a more rewarding time than if you're just like worried about weather a lot.
Right, because it sounds like the things you might have worried about, and the things you actually didn't worry about were the things that happened in some scenarios.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So there's one other type of weather I wanted to ask you about, and that was the wind.
Yeah. So like, honestly, the wind is kind of fun, and like usually get like it. I don't know. For me, wind, like, people talk about wind like it can really affect the temperature, and it does, especially at night. And but so if you gotta want to set your tent out of the wind, but like during the day, like, wind is fun. It's awesome.
I gotta change this battery.
Is that podcast still recording?
Should be.
We can just play pictures. On this.
Yeah, we can just put some pictures on this part. Alright, we're live again.
But, yeah, no, like, walking on a ridge with the wind coming across is really fun. It can be reckless in the winter if there's ice and you're sliding around, but it spices up the day, and I really enjoy a good wind. And then when it's like even hot out and there's mosquitoes, like up north there's mosquitoes, I love being up top and in New Hampshire and Maine on top of the mountains, because below there's like all these mosquitoes, and like the only way that you would be safe from them is if there was wind. So, and that was like a whole another thing. We can, like, there could be an episode about mosquitoes.
Definitely. So I do have one more story I kind of want to hear from you before we close this podcast out. And that was a story you told me about your experience with a hiker along a ridge when the winds were blowing the rain upwards.
Oh, yeah. So that was, and this was like fun. This was one of those where it was like fun, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to get safe now. But, so I had this idea to do the Presidential Traverse in the day, and I had to get to this town by a certain day for like a wedding.
What is the Presidential Traverse?
It's like 24 miles. You hit the Presidential Mountains in Presidential Range in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and it's Mount Jefferson, Mount Adams, Mount Lincoln, maybe not Mount Lincoln, I don't know. Mount Washington is like the crown jewel. There's like 5 or something anyways, me and this guy I was hiking with Badger, we were gonna hike it in a day, and we knew 24 miles. Sounds like, oh, that's not crazy day hike, but it's slow, notoriously slow, and I've been going really slow in New Hampshire, just because it's hard. And then,
all right, we'll cut to some pictures for this part.
But so yeah, so we got up, and it was just like, we're like, let's start at midnight to get through this, and we'll get to the town, and then we can go eat, and I'll take a day off and then go to like this wedding. So I was like, cool. And like, or I wanted to forget what I wanted to do, but I wanted to get to a certain point before the wedding, and it required doing it on this day. But it started raining at midnight when we left, and it's like slowly raining, and it just starts raining more and more. And at this point, it was in the summer, so I didn't have rain pants again, so it was like a repeat of the other time, and it was around 30 degrees, wind chill down in the 20s, raining, and the wind's getting crazy, and up at the top it's like 50, 60 miles an hour, and like up below, like we push through, and like we get to Mount Washington, and I had like $1 or $2, so I was like, I'll go in there and like buy some coffee, maybe we can get some food, bag some food off, someone will feel bad for us. And like once I got inside, I was like, I'm not going back out in that, because so, the rain was blowing streams of water like back up the mountain at that Lake of Clouds hut, and like, so we got in there. Yeah, it was
so 50, 60 degrees. A lot of people, unless you're from Florida, probably haven't experienced that level of wind before. I know me personally, I think 40 miles an hour has been the largest winds I've experienced. Can you give a quick description of what that feels like, especially when you're on a ridge like that?
So like that level of wind is like manageable if it's steady. Like you can lean into it and kind of predict it. And so, because there had been winds like that in the south, in the southern part of the trail in the winter that I dealt with, and crappy conditions, but it was fun and we got through it. But like, didn't really feel like I was in too much danger. Like I felt alive, but it wasn't too bad. But this was like a 60 mile an hour changing gust from side to side, and front and back and all that. So like I'm getting knocked around. I got knocked off my feet, and like that's what made it so dangerous, is because you could lean one way, and then as you're leaning that direction, the wind shifts to that direction. So you're leaning away, and then a 50 mile an hour wind hits you that way, and then you're just like, good luck.
You're on your feet, or your trekking poles or something.
And like your hands you don't want to have your hands out, because like even I had gloves, but like, and they were rubber gloves, but my hands were so cold anyway. So like I wanted them in my pockets, and so I didn't want to have my trekking poles out, and so it was just like, it sucked. And I really wanted to do the whole thing, and the guys with really wanted to do it, but like I just couldn't, so I didn't.
And when you say you couldn't, it's not that you couldn't, but that it would have been dangerous. It sounds like you were getting knocked off your feet on a ridge line.
Yeah, and like the ridge line where I was at when I was getting knocked over, because I at that point, like when it got sketchy, I knew that there was safety at this hut, and like I knew I had to get there. So like I did some dangerous stuff on that ridge line, but I would crawl from point to point when I needed to. I had my feet wedged in cracks like a rock climber, I was being smart, and I probably could have gone over the top like that, but the fall, like once you start up again after that hut, is like, if you fall, you're going down.
Right, and there's
2,000 feet.
There's an interesting little tidbit of information you told me about New Hampshire, and that's that they don't actually come to save you unless you purchased rescue insurance.
Yeah, rescue insurance, or like, yeah, no.
So they wouldn't have come to save you because...
No, but like that, I wasn't even really thinking about that. Because I knew I'd be fine. Like it was like, if I can make it to this hut, if I can really just hammer it there, I think I can get warm, and like they have ways of warming me up, and like an emergency, like I'll get by. And I was just like, if I go back out again,
that's when you incur the risk.
Like I did the risk. I didn't even really want to go up to the Lake of Clouds hut, because I could have stayed at another one, but I just was like, we just pushed on to the next one, and then it just was like, we're going so slow, and it just didn't seem worth it.
Okay.
But so that was, I don't know, I towed the line a bit, and I kind of got put in my place and had to kind of bailed out, but I'm happy that I made it safely.
And it sounds like with intelligence, you still conquered that.
Yeah, and then the next day, like, and it was good because the next day I got to go to Mount Washington and see everything. I mean, it would have sucked to do it because I don't know if I'm going back to New Hampshire, like, do the Appalachian Trail and you don't get to see what's at the top of Mount Washington.
Right.
That's dumb. That's really coming off that ridge is one of the coolest parts of the whole trail.
So with intelligence, handling that type of weather is definitely possible.
Yeah, and then it turns out, like, I don't forget what the scenario was that I felt like I had to rush, but I could get into the town from another road. I still got my 0 day. I still got my Chinese buffet. Got to the wedding a little more rested. Everything worked out. So
right on. I always love hearing that story because it really kind of shows the beauty of the elements. I heard that one of the highest recorded wind speeds was actually in the Whites.
Yeah, and it's the most. I think they had. I don't know. I think their record actually might have gotten beaten for highest wind lately, but it's the most variable weather in the world too.
Right, and when you say variable, what are kind of the peaks of that weather? Do you
like
know?
It can go from 70 to like -10 in like 2 hours.
That's wild.
And like the wind speed it can be like blowing 120, but like I was talking about, not like a steady one way blow, like it's coming from all sides. And like some of the other huts up there have propellers for wind source, some of the lower elevation ones, but they can't have them there up at near Mount Washington and the other two huts up on that ridge because they just break. They're not strong. There's no like one strong enough that can be that small and like survive. You have to be like way bigger and way stronger.
So you mentioned a lot that northbound hikers are more common, and a lot of times southbound hikers who hit the Whites are unprepared for what they have to offer. And this sounds like one of the scenarios in which they might not be prepared if they hit weather systems that drop from 70 to -10 and they haven't had the time to build up experience. That might break someone. Yeah,
and it's dangerous. I mean, it's really dangerous because I like ultralight backpacking, and I like not carrying as much as you need. But like for that part, you do need more stuff, and it's
right.
Ultralight isn't a weight; it's just not. It's having what you need. So like, I should have had rain pants. I should have had an extra puffy. I should have had an extra pair of tights. I should have had a lot of stuff that I'd had earlier in the year. I just didn't because it was frankly inconvenient to figure all that out and expensive. Inconvenient or expensive, I should say. So I just didn't. I just soldiered on. But like, yeah, it wasn't good. And especially, I don't know. I'd been through a lot worse cold, and I also like I didn't feel like I had anything to prove about handling the weather. Like I started January 1st. Like you can say like, oh, you should have gone over. You should have been braver. But I didn't have any like ego about it at all because I was like, I've done things you can't imagine.
All right, on. Well, thanks for sharing that story, Jake. I know we gotta get out to work here, so I did want to ask what your kind of key takeaways were in preparing and handling that weather on the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, just whatever you're gonna go after, especially with this weather, but anything it could be dangerous. Be prepared, respect it, practice with safety nets. Just be analytical of how you handle things that are a little more high risk, and but it can be very, very rewarding too. So just go get after it.
Right on. And we'll talk a little bit more in a later podcast about mentality. I know, Jake, you mentioned that one of the big things that got you through the weather was having a mentality that was greater than 50% positive. Do you still think that's true?
Yeah, no, I think I think this isn't necessarily about the weather, but it comes through the most with the weather, I feel like, when you're backpacking. But yeah, just being positive, but also just knowing you have to be positive to survive, like to get through. So even if you're in a bad feeling and it's not clicking and you're in a rut, like just know that eventually you have to feel good, and eventually you will feel good, and you'll figure it out, and things will get better, or you'll figure out how to make them better. And then just know that that's the eventual goal, and you'll eventually get there. So even if things aren't always positive and chipper, they can always become that way.
Right on.
So if it's raining, the sun will come out.
And well, thanks for the time today, Jake. And for the viewers, this was an informatory podcast, but we will be sharing, Jake will be sharing, why facing this weather is worth it, why it is uplifting, and why, facing these challenges are worth it, and why the work put in does pay off. And I think we'll finish the podcast off with that outro. But for now, we're gonna head to work, and thank you all for listening.
Word.
All right, take one.
Okay. I feel like this podcast has gotten, or you could listen to this and have a takeaway like, oh, well, camping in the winter is dumb and sounds miserable, and I don't want to do it. And I just say that because I really, really enjoy it. I think there's like a lot of like really cool benefits. It's important to be safe with them, and you have to kind of have skills to enjoy it fully. But there's a lot of really cool things about camping in the winter. You get a lot more solitude. And on a trail like the Appalachian, you get like with the normal Thru-Hike, you can have a lot of, like, it's just a lot of people, and the hostels can be crowded, and it kind of can take away from that wilderness experience that, is part of backpacking. And the same thing with any kind of day hike or like the local spots around you that probably get really crowded with hikers on the weekends and stuff when you're free. But if you go in the winter, no one's really out there. There's a spot, the Pinnacle near me, that is a really popular day hike, and my dad would train on it, because he hiked with us. He came out in February. But anyway, he was training on it every weekend, and he said he saw 2 people the entire time, and he was going on Saturdays. When if you go to that trail in the summer, you almost can't even park. You have to like park illegally sometimes to even hike the trail. So you can get a lot of solitude, and there you can get all the views, especially on like the east, where they have a lot of leaves on the trees in the summer. And it's, the Appalachian Trail is referred to as the Green Tunnel because you can't really see out, and it's all just trees. But in the winter, you can see everything and kind of see the topography of the landscape better, and it helps you understand the views more. And you can kind of watch them as you walk up the mountain, and then, you don't have to spend as much time at each view and get cold and stuff because you've been looking at it all day. So it's kind of like hiking out west and other places that have like more open and have like views the whole time. You can kind of get that feeling in the winter on the East Coast. And it's just really beautiful. I just showed David a picture from the trail. I put it on my Instagram, but it was a picture of the Smokies, and like it kind of rained. It had snowed, and then it rained a little bit, and so like